Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu vowing to implement the recommendations of a scathing Human Rights Commission report.
It found that poor management of water resources in some KZN municipalities had become a violation of human rights. The Human Rights Commission wants local and national government to strengthen accountability for water boards.
The inquiry follows complaints by over 600 disgruntled residents.
The South African Human Rights Commission recently published a report on the state of water in the province. The report correctly pointed out that there are many challenges with regard to providing all citizens in the province with access to reliable water. The report included recommendations for actions by the Department of Water and Sanitation, including the need to take regulatory actions where necessary, and the department is implementing the recommendations.
Parts of Gauteng have been battling with dry taps as well in recent weeks. Now, this is because, in part, of crumbling infrastructure. For more on this, let's speak to the Johannesburg Water electro-mechanical operations manager, Gugulethu Quma, also joining the conversation tonight as Rand Water's bulk water distribution executive manager, Ntombenhle Tau, and Mbali Matiwane is the divisional head of water quality and revenue management for the city of Ekurhuleni. My thanks to you all. Let's begin then with Rand Water and Ntombenhle. You have been carrying out maintenance work today affecting large parts of northern Johannesburg. An update first on how that's going at this point.
Good evening, Ntombenhle. Good evening to the listeners. We didn't have any maintenance that was carried out by Rand Water today. My understanding was that that maintenance was for
Johannesburg Water, correct?
Yes.
My apologies, I didn't mean to say Johannesburg Water. Has that been sorted out? Gugu?
Okay, can I ask my colleague Gugulethu to ask this?
Gugulethu, can you hear us?
Thank you so much, Ntombenhle. Good evening to yourself and good evening to the viewers. Yes, regularly Johannesburg Water will carry out planned maintenance throughout the infrastructure, and sometimes we do also carry out the unplanned infrastructure, maintenance in our infrastructure. But if you can repeat your question again.
My question was about the work that was being done today to repair a valve affecting mainly large parts of northern Johannesburg. Has that gone well, and do you expect everything to return to normal from 10 p.m., which was the cut-off time set out in your initial statement announcing the work that had to be done?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, the work that continued as planned, and the anticipated restoration is 10 o'clock in the evening. So the work is currently progressing well, and as soon as the maintenance team complete that work, we'll be able to start charging and restoring the system to the larger areas of Johannesburg that were affected by the shutdown. Thank you, Ntombenhle.
And then let me go to you now, then, Ntombenhle, and talk about the water problems in Gauteng. Safe to say, we can all agree that we are in somewhat of a crisis at this moment. What is the reason precisely?
Look, Ntombenhle, it's not really a crisis. It's mainly the demand that is increasing, and it's expected we will see with different seasons of the year, you have different consumption or demand that you need to expect. Now, during the summer season, which is our peak season basically in the water industry, it's when then you start seeing the demand going up. Most of the people will start flushing their pools. Others will start then irrigating their lawn, and because of that, then you start seeing a peak in demand, and it's expected throughout the year. You will have high peak and low peak season. So what we have now, it's not a crisis. It's what we know that, and we knew that it's going to happen.
It's hard to sell that to Gauteng residents when you say there's no crisis, when people are telling us that in some municipalities they're going without tap water for several days. You've got the Water and Sanitation Minister, Newzroom talking about this water shifting, basically issuing a directive, which is not something that happens as a norm. That does not sound as if all is well.
Yeah, so I wanted to continue. With the high demand season, you then, in a normal environment, you will have, if you would have your system running normal with no breakdowns, we are supposed to be able to supply everyone equitably, but because of knowing that we're running an operation similar to your vehicle as well. If you're driving a vehicle, you are bound to have breakdowns, and during those breakdowns, you need to then pause, do some repairs, and then restart. Now, if the system is vulnerable as it is now during the high demand season, whatever that happens, any failure that happens in the system, it then disturbs the whole supply. So the reason why we're sitting where we're sitting at the moment, it's because of a number of failures. It's not a lot per se. Well, there was one big failure that we had in the previous 2 weeks, which then destabilizes the whole system, and it takes sometimes it will take you close to a month to recover, especially during high demand season.
I want to go back then to you, Gugulethu Quma, electro-mechanical operations manager at Johannesburg Water. The Deputy Minister for Water and Sanitation, David Mahlobo, by his assessment, says it's Rand Water and the municipalities that are to blame for what are, at the very least, crisis-like conditions. Have you failed the people of Johannesburg?
Thank you, Ntombenhle. No, we cannot attribute that to the failure or the complete failure of the water supply to the resident of Johannesburg Water. Fairly, most of the systems of Johannesburg Water, they have constraints, they are under pressure, but we do manage to distribute or manage to get the water distributed through our network in our reticulation and distribution systems. But there are areas where, as articulated, that the consumption have drastically went up due to the change of seasons, and during this period we have constraints in our system, and the available supply, or rather the demand outstretched the available supply. And in those cases now, those systems, they struggle to recover. They struggle to do some improvements at night, but during the day, the consumption relatively goes high and extremely high, to such that those systems that are mentioned, and we can communicate regular on them, they go to as critical as low, and in some instances they go to empty.
But if this is a period where you know there's an increase in demand, among the reasons the fact that it's getting hotter, people are out more, they're using water more, how is it that so many years on you're still unable to adequately plan for this period, so that people aren't in a situation where they're having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days in some cases without water?
Thank you so much. But we also need to understand that once you start implementing your water demand strategies, it means that now you are monitoring what is coming in and what is going out. Right now, for example, Ntombenhle, we are in level 1 water restriction, which will continue until March next year. And if you're looking at the consumption pattern for Johannesburg Water currently, we are actually consuming above than the bulk supply that we should be consuming. So that is a cause for concern, and that means now some of the systems now they will be receiving so much supply, but the demand always outstretches that supply.
Right.
Now that means that we need to go to load shifting, which means now we have to disturb other systems, trying to augment other systems, which the design sometimes or the configuration of the network doesn't always allow. But we are aware that in September your demand will kick in, but the water demand management strategy must also kick in so that we can curb the high demand.
Let me ask you then on that point. water shifting and the level 1 restrictions, which you implement annually anywhere at this time of the year, does the implementation, or would the implementation of water shifting cancel out the restrictions, or will you run both at the same time? And if so, how would that affect the daily lives of people in the city?
Thank you. Water restrictions have to be implemented because, remember, we are a water scarce country anyway. So once the demand starts to increase, we have to regulate it in some form of restriction. The water shifting or load shifting in this case is implemented to augment those areas now that don't have supply, because we need to move supply from certain areas or certain system of the city to other system. But remember, Ntombenhle, once you start implementing the load shifting, it means now you are taking or you are depriving the other system. That means now you need to shift the load back to that one, because now you are trying to balance all your system, those ones that are affected and those ones that are failing. But you can only implement a successful load shifting if your other system is fairly doing well. But all the systems are relatively constrained. So while you're moving water from this system to the other one is taking a knock, and you need to find a balance and also implement the restriction in the process.
Let me ask you all to stand by for us then. In a moment, when News of Prime continues, we'll focus on the situation in Ekurhuleni, because people there have also not been spared from the impact of water restrictions and water cuts. Welcome back. We're focusing tonight still on the water problems in Gauteng, looking at Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni in particular, also hearing from Rand Water. For this conversation, we're still joined by Johannesburg's Water Electro-Mechanical Operations Manager, Gugulethu Quma, as well as Rand Water's Bulk Water Distribution Executive Manager, Ntombenhle Tau, and Mbali Matiwane is Divisional Head of Water Quality and Revenue Management in the city of Ekurhuleni. Mbali, let me come to you then, because people in Ekurhuleni have also been speaking to the media saying they've gone days in some cases without proper water supply. Why is that?
Good evening, Ntombenhle, and thank you for the question. So, Ntombenhle, as you know, the metros in Gauteng were all supplied by one system, which is the Rand Water system. So, in the past, or the middle of August, we started experiencing insufficient supply to some of our distribution areas, in particular your Tsakane area and your divisional. And part of those reasons is that the system that is supplying us is integrated to a point that the water that is supplied to Mpumalanga and to Pretoria passes through Ekurhuleni. So if there is any high usage from one of the system or any inefficiencies or high demand, the city's system gets affected. So what our system is from Mapleton system, which is the Rand Water system, and we were experiencing low storage levels for a particular period, which affected the areas of Tsakane to be without water for a period of over a month, actually, with intermittent supply.
And what about the issue of water that's being wasted? Because the criticism for all three metros is that it's one thing for the bigger problems that are affecting water supply, but when you've got pipes that are leaking for weeks on end that are not being fixed, when you've got maintenance that is lagging behind, that contributes to the problem, and therefore you should be the people who shoulder responsibility for that. What is the maintenance plan in Ekurhuleni?
Thanks, Ntombenhle. So the city were actually the leaders in terms of water demand management within Gauteng, the city of Ekurhuleni. Our non-revenue water is sitting below 30%, and the province's average, or the country's average, is over 41%. So the city has been implementing its water demand management strategy for many years now, and we put a lot of budgets and efforts in terms of demand management, and that includes quick response to leak fixing, its pressure management, is on-property leak fixing. We actually embarked on a 3-year program of fixing leaks on property because people don't afford to, and the entire system loses water. So the city is a leader in terms of managing demand, responding quicker to leaks, and maintaining its infrastructure. So obviously the infrastructure backlog that we have in all municipalities, which is issues of pipe replacement. We have old AC pipes, asbestos cement pipes, which needs a high rate of replacement. And the city continues with those efforts, but not at the rate that we'd wish for. However, the city plays its part in terms of improving efficiencies in the system to reduce losses as much as possible.
You're in revenue collection. Money is important because fixing many of the problems to do with the provision of water is going to be expensive. Are you getting enough money from collection of rates? And how much more would you need realistically in order to resolve this?
So, Ntombenhle, this intermittent water supply or these water interruptions are really costing the city because, one, we have to start by providing alternative supply of water to residents through the form of water tankers. And that costs the city 3 million rands a month just to provide water through the alternative way of tankers, which is still not sufficient. And secondly, we experience a lot of revenue loss in terms of income because remember, if areas like your Bedford View sit without water for 10 days, that is about 1 million rands for the 10 days each time the users don't have money. So we are affected. The city of Ekurhuleni is also very industrial. We service big companies which are in manufacturing, like your Tiger Brands, Coca-Cola, Distel. So if those companies are affected in their production, that automatically affects the revenue that we are able to generate on a month-to-month basis. So the current interruptions are affecting what we generate and the cost of what we need to maintain or to sustain the supply during this period.
All right, thank you very much to all our guests for being with us tonight. We spoke to the Johannesburg Water electro-mechanical operations manager Gugulethu Quma, Rand Water bulk water distribution executive manager Ntombenhle Tau, and lastly there was Mbali Matiwane, divisional head of water quality and revenue management in the city of Ekurhuleni. My thanks to all three of you